over here is flowing in over here, which makes it an asset. And that's how you know. When you look at a regular financial statement, this is the most important line right here. Not how much money you earn, but the income coming in from your investments. That's what I'm looking at here. So that's the reason why I invest for cash flow and not for capital gains. Capital gains is gambling. It's gambling. You know, when somebody says, oh, I better get in and start buying because prices are going up. I don't care if it's stocks, bonds, real estate, gold. It is the most stupid thing you can do is invest for capital gains. It is gambling. But that's what 99% of the people do because they've never been trained to be investors. They don't invest over here. Every month, I must have cash flow because I am a professional investor here. Does that make sense to you guys here? Where the passive investor, I'm an active investor, the passive investors are this. It's called this here. Oh, I hope the market goes up. I hope it goes up. It's going up. Oh, yes. You watch CNBC. Oh, market's going up. Oh, the Dow's up today. Oh, good, 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 good. You know, loser. You know, geez. There's nothing wrong with capital gains. When I invest, I first invest for this, and second, I want this. In other words, I want both. The average person is just happy with one. But to get both, you have to be a better investor, and most of these people haven't got the financial training to do that. So that's why accountants and lawyers and all that will say, well, don't listen to Robert, or especially your stockbroker will say, don't listen to him, or your real estate broker says, oh, don't listen to him. You can't get cash flow off of real estate. You know, because they're brokers. They're broker than you are. They need the commission. You know, they're not living off of, they're living off of, most brokers are living off of commission here. Whereas an investor is living off of cash flow here, and the gamblers are going for capital gains. And that's how you can see it. Once you can see it, you can see it all the time here. So the last thing is this, don't just take my word for it. This is what Warren Buffett says about people who invest for capital gains. They hope the price is going to go up, uptrend stuff. Warren Buffett says the dumbest reason in the world to buy a stock, and this applies to real estate or anything, or gold or oil, the dumbest reason in the world to buy a stock or anything is because it is going up in price. That's what it means. And what Buffett is saying here is that most people are investing for this, where if you really want to be a professional investor, you're investing for cash flow. So one of the reasons I created Teach to Be Rich here is very simply because once a person gets into one of these patterns, it's really hard to get out. It's like a rut. So before a person can change anything, they've got to change what's behind their ears. Or if I could say, as I said, I can tell whether a person's going to be rich or poor by their expenses really, really quickly. Poor people simply buy poor things. Whereas I was answering a question earlier, I was talking about as a rich person, what I buy first are assets. I don't buy liabilities. My assets buy my liabilities. For example, when I wanted to buy another Porsche, I bought a piece of real estate, and the cash flow from that real estate pays for my Porsche. What the middle class, and the reason they're middle class, is the first thing they buy is lifestyle things. They want the nice house and the nice car. I have gone without eating, and I've gone without the nice house, because assets are number one here. And so what makes a person rich, poor, middle class is what is number one for them. For the poor, number one is just pure survival. For the middle class, is looking good, keeping up with the Joneses. And number three are assets. And when I talk to a person, I can tell really who they are simply by what they're buying, but also what it shows up here. So the reason again for creating Teach to Be Rich, as well as a cash flow game, is they're designed to bust up the patterns inside your head, because if you don't change the pattern, nothing really changes there. So moving forward again, because our school systems don't teach us much about financial education, we learn that at home from our parents. So on the plasma screen over here, you're going to find out what the poor teach their kids about money. So the poor, like my poor dad really sincerely, he thought, I'm a good man and the government should take care of people. How many people know people like that? The government should take care of you. And so that's why he believed in a government job. He believed in, Social Security, and he believed in Medicare. But as I'm saying, the reason I created this Teach to Be Rich program, as you're going to see by the end of it, is the debt for a number of people, starting with the president on down, expecting to be taken care of, is going to wipe out a great country like the United States. But as I said, it's also a problem throughout the world, because all over the world, the rich are taking from the poor, actually, through taxes and things like this. So that's what the poor believe in. And what the poor person is, as I was answering your question, is the poor are basically non-investors. Poor just simply believe the government's going to take care of me, or the company's going to take care of me. And that's why they're poor. They have a very poor financial mindset. It doesn't mean they don't make a lot of money. My poor dad made a lot of money. He was a very high-paid government official, but he never invested it because he thought investing was risky. And you'll find out in this program that investing is not risky. The second group is the middle class. What they believe in is this is their financial education. A good education. A high-paying what? Job. A big house. Your house is your most important investment and asset. And they all believe in that. And a pension. And a pension either comes from the government or 401k or something like that. And those people are basically they're passive investors. So they invest, but they turn their money over to somebody they hope and pray is smarter than they are. And unfortunately, most of the time they aren't, because they're turning their money over not to investors, but they're turning their money over to people who are salespeople, not investors. And what the rich believe in, this my rich dad taught me, is number one, he says, be an entrepreneur, like Bill Gates and Oprah, and be an investor, an active investor like Buffett or Trump. So what Teach to Be Rich is about is for people who want to understand how to be entrepreneurs and how to be active investors, not passive investors. So that's what this program is really designed for. If you still want to put your money in a 401k and all that, this may not be the program for you. But stay tuned, because I think you'll find out that the 401k or those pensions or mutual funds or stocks or savings or bonds are the riskiest of all investments. And that's what happens to passive investors, where active investors want higher returns with less risk. So one of the problems with being a passive investor is that so many people come up to me and they go, I have $25,000, what should I do with it? And the first thing I say is, if I were you, I wouldn't tell anybody you have $25,000. Because if you don't know what to do with your $25,000, there's a lot of people that do, you know? And generally what they're going to do is tell them to put it in their pocket. And this is what this program is about here, is many times the people giving out financial advice are not rich people, but salespeople. This is what Warren Buffett has to say about financial advisors. And this is on Warren Buffett says, Wall Street is the only place that people ride to in a Rolls Royce to get advice from those who take the subway. And that is my experiences. So as this program rolls on, you'll be hearing that the idea of work hard, save money, get out of debt, invest for the long term, and diversify is really bad financial advice, highly risky financial advice. So that's why at the start of this program I said, be careful, because your financial advisor is going to say, don't watch this program, because this is the advice they give. My rich dad said this. He says the reason they're called brokers, like stock brokers, real estate brokers, insurance brokers, is because they're broker than you are, And they have to live on their commissions and things like this. There's nothing right or wrong with it, because I still use brokers. The problem is most people do not know, because they're passive investors, because there's no financial education, they don't know a good investment from a what? Bad investment. They don't know a risky investment from a safe investment. They don't know a good advisor from a bad advisor. And that's what this program is about. It is designed not to sell you any investments, but hopefully to improve your financial intelligence, your financial IQ, to make you a better investor and make better investment decisions. Thank you very much.
Investor, educator, and author Robert Kiyosaki has changed millions of lives all over the world. His book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, has been on the New York Times bestseller list for over 5 years. We all know that the gap between the haves and the have-nots is growing, and Social Security and Medicare are in a financial mess. And just affording to live is getting expensive. So how does a person get ahead financially? The answer is raising your financial IQ and having your money work for you. Here's Robert Kiyosaki with Rich Dads Teach to Be Rich.
So welcome back, and I'm going to be moving into now a little bit of history, but also why the world is changing so much. So a very important year is 1974. And the reason 1974 is important is, according to my opinion, it was a shift when America and the world shifted from socialism to capitalism. Now, I know most people think America is a capitalistic country, but it's really highly social in that it believes in the government should protect and take care of people. And now moving to capitalism is changing. I'm not saying one is better than the other, I'm just saying it's changing. But 1974 was the year I came back. I got out of the Marine Corps after 5 years as a pilot in the Marine Corps. And I went to my dad, and as I said before, I asked him, what should I do with the rest of my life? And my dad said, go back to school, get your master's, get your PhD, and get a job with the government. And I went, oh my God. So at that point, I went to Waikiki to see my rich dad, and I said, what should I recommend? But the saddest thing about 1974 when I talked to my poor dad was very simply, my poor dad in 1974 was saying, go back to school with my PhD so I could get a safe, secure job. And my dad was unemployed. He was about, 1974, he was about 50 years old. And the reason he was unemployed, like I said before, he ran for lieutenant governor against his boss, the governor. And the governor said to my dad, you will never work in this state again. In other words, you will never get a job here. So here's my dad. He did all the right things except stand up for his conscience and run against a corrupt government. And at that point, he never got a job again. So that's why at that point I knew I'd better listen to my rich dad. And I went to see my rich dad, and I went to see him, and I said, I want to follow in your footsteps, not my poor dad's footsteps, and I want to be an entrepreneur and an investor. In other words, I didn't want to go over here with my PhD, I just wanted to come over here. So he said, I said, I'll be an entrepreneur. And the first thing he said to me, he says, if you're going to be rich, you're going to be an entrepreneur, you must learn how to sell. And that was my first real awakening to the real world. He says, if you can't sell, you'll never be an entrepreneur. He says, that's what entrepreneurs are doing all the time. And I had this really negative block because my family, being school teachers, thought that salesmen were the scum of the earth. I had to go against my family's biases about salespeople, and I got a job with Xerox, and for 2 years I was the worst salesman Xerox had, and then 4 years later I was #1 in sales and things like this, so I learned that. But that's why 1974 was so important to me. But even on the world scheme, 1974 was important because that was the introduction of a thing called ERISA. And ERISA stands for Employee Retirement Income Security Act, which led to, back a few years later, to a thing we now know as a 401k. This came out about 1980, so 74 to transition to that. And I think the primary reason I do this Teach to Be Rich and all this stuff, and I created the Rich Dad Company, is because of this act over here. It is one of the biggest changes that we have had in the world today, but very few people have taken notice of it. Because the 401k is a very significant little investment type of vehicle. The reason the 401k is so important is because it is probably the riskiest of all investment vehicles. You know, your banker won't lend you money for it. You can't get insurance on it. And not only that, it only will work for about 20% of the population. If you're making less than $150,000 a year, it is doubtful whether the 401k will provide enough income for you when you need it. So the reason the 401k in 1974 is so significant is that why this is important, like I said, was the shift from socialism to capitalism, 1974. But what it signified was this, it was that the companies, the big corporations, were no longer going to take care of the employees. That's what it meant. Up until this point, my poor dad had the right idea. Go to school, and the company and the government will take care of you. 74 was so important because basically the big corporations were saying, employees are too expensive, we're not going to take care of anymore. So we're not going to protect the employee. So the employee suddenly had to come from here to over here as passive investors. And they have no financial education, which is really why I'm upset with the school system, because even though the world changed, our school system still teaches us very little about money. And I always say, you know, rich or poor, smart or not so smart, we're all going to use money, so why doesn't the school system teach anything about money? But even though the 74 change happened here, nothing happened. And that's, like I say, well, how many years is that? 25, 30 years ago that change happened. Our schools still do not teach us anything about money. But this is what's happening in America today. USA Today did a survey, and they found Americans' greatest fear is running out of money during retirement. And that fear is now caused by this 1974 change, because people now realize that a 401k is not a pension. A 401k is now a savings plan. And the difference between a pension and a savings plan is this, is pensions will take care of you for your rest of your life. A savings plan will only take care of you as long as you have money in the account. So that's why USA Today found the greatest fear is that. Then the Fox network did the same survey. They wanted to find out what the greatest fear was. It said, is terrorism a greatest fear or retirement a greatest fear? And what Fox found out, these are approximate numbers, Fox News, they found out that about 22% or 26% thought that terrorism, Al-Qaeda, was the greatest fear. 60% thought that running out of money was the greatest fear during retirement. And the reason that is happening, again, for this change right here. And so that's why I created this book, Teach to Be Rich here, and all this, is because there are millions of people who are afraid of running out of money during retirement because our schools haven't picked up the slack of the change of 1974. I believe it is this law change that the reason I created Rich Dad, Poor Dad, the Rich Dad Company, the cash flow games. And in the year 2002, I wrote this book here called Rich Dad's Prophecy. How many people have read this book here? Good, a lot of you have. It's not as popular. This was not a very popular book because this book was written about the 1974 change. And all of my predictions in this book, many Wall Street companies came after me. Many magazines came after me. They absolutely trashed this book. They called me a quack. I didn't know what I was talking about. But it is, I think, not the most popular book, but the single most important book for many people. So, again, this was 2002. And then in 2005, 3 years later, the New York Times says the same thing that prophecy says. Exactly the same thing. So this is 2002, this is 2005, and it says here, we regret to inform you that you no longer have a pension. That basically what they're saying is that these people after 1974, pension plans became one of the biggest sources of funds for the rich. They just take money out of it, and the middle class and the people who put money in there don't get anything inside of it. So this is the New York Times, October 30th, 2005. Then October 31st, 2005, Time magazine said the same thing. It says, the great retirement ripoff. Again, saying the same thing my book in prophecy said 3 years earlier. And it says here, millions of Americans who think they will retire with benefits are in for a nasty surprise. How corporations are picking people's pockets with the help of Congress. That's what these articles are about here. So they say the same thing prophecy says here. This is 2005, this is 2002. So that's why I created this product here, Teach to Be Rich, and my cash flow games, is because of this right here. Because what has happened in the world is so many people then, because of 1974, were forced to become passive investors. And I'd like to show you on the screen what the difference between a passive investor is and an active investor. So number one, a passive investor, one, they have no control. And this whole talk is about control. The next segment, I'll go into what control really is. Next is higher risk. They invest in the highest of risk investments. The highest risk investments are savings, stocks, bonds, mutual funds. They're the riskiest of all investments, but most people think they're safe for some reason. And you'll find out today that they're the riskiest. Number three, the banker will not lend you money for your 401k or mutual funds. If your banker doesn't trust them, why should you? That's the test. Don't believe my word, ask the banker. Number four, insurance agents will not insure your 401k against losses. As a real estate investor, I'm not pushing real estate, I had one of my buildings burned. Thank God nobody was hurt, but the insurance company replaced it and replaced my rent and all this. I never invest without insurance, but millions of people, due to that 1974 change, moved over here as passive investors. They have no insurance, and they're putting their money into investments a banker would not touch. Number 4 or 5, higher taxes. The 401k is one of the least tax efficient of all investment vehicles. 401ks only work if you're planning on being poor when you retire. The reason I don't have a 401k is I plan on being rich when I retire. Because when I put money into my 401k, when I retire, let's say at age 65, when I pull the money out, it comes pulling out as ordinary income. If I have a lot of money, ordinary income is one of the most highest taxed of all incomes there is. It doesn't make any sense for me because I make so much money, I might be paying 40, 50% tax on that money. I'd rather be in real estate where I can pay 0 tax. That makes more sense to me. So that's why I don't have a 401k. And this is all part of the financial education. I think they should tell kids early so they don't take a job with a 401k and do something else. Number 6, they always worry about market crashes. You know, they're always worried about it, and they're always asking their financial planner, you know, what do you see in the future? You know, the stock's going up, stock's going down, prices coming up, prices going down. You know, that's gambling. That's not what I do. Number 7, is they have very low returns. This book, Unconventional Success, is written by a man named David F. Swenson. If you don't take my word for it, take his word for it. He's a chief investment officer for a company called Yale University. This guy's a very smart guy. It's a great book. But he says this, that mutual funds have not done any returns over the long term. The reason I'll go into a little later on, the reason mutual funds have not had high returns is because the fees they take out of them. I'll be going into that a little later. So if you insist on investing in paper assets, I would buy this book here because it's a great book. But he goes into why investing for the long term in mutual funds absolutely makes no sense, even over the long haul, because there's almost 0 returns in them. Not 0, but very low returns. Number 8, the plan can run out of money. As I said, the problem with the 401k, it is not a pension plan, it is a savings plan. Number 9,